Okay, my name's Jerry. This is part 2 of my sand casting video on how to sand cast a rattlesnake tail. And yesterday we made this mold. See, this is the mold. And today we're gonna melt the silver and do the casting. And this is what we hope to end up with, is a nice sterling silver rattlesnake tail. Okay. First we need to talk about silver, and we need to talk about melting silver. It's not just as easy as throwing a torch on a piece of silver and having it turn into a puddle. Sterling silver 925 is 92.5% silver. The other 7.5% can be anything. Sterling silver is a mix of a few different minerals. In countries like Africa and Indonesia, and a lot of times that 7.5% is just copper. But whatever it is, it all causes the same problems. When you heat up the silver and it starts to melt, these copper oxides come to the surface of the metal, and silver oxides form on the surface of the metal under this heat. And unfortunately, that stuff doesn't stick to anything. It's kind of messy. You can't solder two pieces together if those oxides are present. When you melt stuff down, it doesn't flow, it doesn't act right because of those oxides. It kind of clumps up, and anyway, it's just a mess. So what you have to use is a stuff called flux. And what flux does is it melts a little bit below the temperature of the silver, and it stays a liquid that coats the silver until well after the silver's melted. I have no idea what the boiling point of flux is. I've never hit it. But anyway, these fluxes, what they do is they form this coating over top of the silver, and as the oxides rise to the surface and form on the surface, they float off into this flux. Some fluxes have acid in them, usually a boric acid, and what it does is it helps dissolve the oxides and does what's called pickling, which completely clears up the oxide after the soldering and stuff. But anyway, a traditional flux is just good old borax. This stuff is 20 multein, 100% borax. I buy it right off the shelf, and for general melting of metal, this is the one I like to use. Other fluxes, like here's a self-pickling flux, and it's a liquid. This one cost me, what is it, like 16 ounces, so it's half a quart, and it was $8. And then this one, Ultra Flux, I use it. I like it because it's kind of a paste. It's thicker than this one, and sometimes it'll actually hold pieces in place while you solder them. But anyway, you don't need to go that exotic. Borax, good old borax, right off the shelf, cheap as hell. You can buy a big old box for $3, and it'll last you for the rest of your life. Okay, now the silver I melt is just scrap silver. This is cut off pieces from jewelry I've made. This looks like a bezel to something. You know, sometimes I'll go to like the swap meets or whatever, and I'll buy a piece of crappy sterling silver jewelry and just tear the silver off of it. So anyway, what I've got here, and let me adjust the camera so you can see this. All right, so you got the crucible, you got the handle, this part right here, and then you need a torch. Now, like torches run the gambit. You can't even imagine the variation. Okay, I'm using a let me turn the thing up here. Okay, this is just a Burns-O-Matic, or maybe it's a turbo torch. Oh no, it's a Burns-O-Matic, but it had the swirl flame. They call it the turbo flame. This gets hot enough. I have it connected to, here, I'll show you down here. I have it connected to this huge propane tank right there. I've had that going on 2 years now at least. It takes, I mean, it's forever. There are, you know, oxyacetylene torches. There are oxygen propane torches. There's acetylene torches that are specially made just for melting. There's so many options. This torch costs like 50 or 60 bucks. I've used it for, God, I can't even count the years, at least 15. And it works just fine. It takes me a few minutes longer to melt the silver. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of speed through that. Maybe I'll set the camera up on time lapse. We'll see. But anyway, I've never been wealthy to go out and buy everything I wanted. So I had to make do with what works, and this works. When you figure that 90% of all the jewelry in the world is made in third world countries by people sitting on dirt floors, you know they don't have a $500 torch. You know, they're using a blowpipe and a candle flame in some instances. So anyway, like I said, you don't need to go out and buy expensive equipment until you know the difference between the expensive stuff and the good stuff. I'm going to turn the torch on, and we're going to heat it up, and it'll heat and heat and heat and heat, and it'll melt down. And what'll happen is it'll form a ball when you're getting close to the point where you're going to pour it into the mold. That ball will start to roll over and over and over and over and over and over and over real fast. It's called a rolling boil. On metal, it's real obvious. And you can see if the whole thing's moving. If there's any little chunks that aren't fully melted, you can see them in there. And it's always better to get a little hotter than you need. As soon as it melts, don't just jump right into pouring it. Give it a few seconds more to heat up. So here we go. I'm going to turn the torch on. I use this little gizmo to light my torch. Okay, I always turn it on kind of high. Okay, here we go. I've added a little borax, sprinkled just a little bit of borax in there, and you can see there's lots of flux still on here. The flux forms like like glass in the bowl, and you need less and less every time you do it. The flux kind of sticks around. So anyway, here we go. So. I don't know if you can see that, but it's starting to roll up into a ball and turn over on itself. Okay, there we go. Move this over a little bit. Get this a little closer so you can see what I'm doing. Right, there we go. Okay, there you go. Now this thing is rolling over and over and over. You can see it's just a little ball of molten silver. And you can see the flux is all around it. Now I'm just going to make sure it's a little hotter. Then I'm going to keep it getting it hot. And I'm going to heat up the little spout too. I don't want it cooling off too quick. And 1, 2, 3, and 4. I always do that. I don't know if it does any difference, but let me turn the torch off. Now comes the moment of truth. So, okay, here we go. The great unveiling. Let me set up the camera. Alright, here's the great unveiling. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. So let's see what we got going on here. And here we go. Okay. Voila. Oh, look at that. It looks like we got the whole thing. A little better picture of it. Alright, looks like it's all there. You can see on the other side of the mold the part that's blacked out. See, what I'll do is I'll just take a little brush, like a little toothbrush, and brush that part into the garbage, and then I can save all the rest of the sand. Okay, I'm going to pick it up, and then I'll put it down in here. Oh, there you go. Okay. It came out pretty good. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll go throw it on the buffer for a minute and we'll see see how good. Okay, now this isn't the final step or anything, but you can see that came out pretty darn nice, pretty close. It came out pretty darn nice.